Okay. All right. I'm gonna keep going here. I'll wait for folks to turn videos on and we'll get started. Okay. All right. Okay. So as far as kind of paperwork level stuff, these are your actual objectives that you are asked to cover in level two fieldwork. So this is stuff that ACOT is asking that you be proficient in, and most importantly for you all to know, these are the things that you're essentially getting assessed on. So it directly translates to the eval that your fieldwork educator is going to be filling out. So all of these different sections are sections that you'll be um, evaluated on. So the first one is being able to gather information regarding your client's occupational performance. So just going through that process, and again, all of these things certainly will be site specific, but this is just the beginning of that process, right? Then they're going to be looking at how you're able to articulate a clear and logical rationale for an evaluation and intervention process. And so that involves articulation to team members, to any, pertinent people at the site, and being able to apply theories, knowledge, etc., to support your decisions. Okay, the next section they'll be looking at is your ability to use evaluation findings to develop intervention plans. Of course, you want to have those client-centered goals, and you want to be interpreting observations and data that you've gathered from the client to build out that intervention plan. So that's another area that you'll be working on at your level two field work, and then essentially assessed on during midterm and then at final. And then the next step in the process that you'll be practicing is reporting results and documenting evaluations and intervention plans. So that documentation. They'll be evaluating also how clear and concise you are, um, that your documentation follows a logical manner, that your observations that then led to certain clinical decisions made sense. They'll be looking that you have a strong, grasp on how to utilize technologies, or et cetera, that's available at the facility. So that is another area that they'll be looking at. The next area will be to implement the intervention with either individuals or groups, and that can depend on the site. This is where they're going to be looking that you're able to adhere to precautions, to contraindications, depending on, what's going on for the client. Clinical decision making for times when you need to adapt or modify your plan. You may have a plan and you may have to just modify and do something different. So they'll be looking at your ability to make those decisions, make those adaptations, etc. They're going to be looking a little bit at also your therapeutic use of self, right? With that behavioral reaction, emotional regulation, etc. How are you able to respond to how the client is responding to your intervention? So you're looking at how you can help a client through the process. Another area they'll be looking at is your ability to participate in interprofessional and intraprofessional collaborations. This will probably, will be dictated by the structure of the site. There's going to be different opportunities for this at different sites, but whatever the culture of the site is, the expectations of the site, they're going to be looking that you, by the end of field work, are able to, show up at rounds and be able to talk to the whole group and tell folks, tell social work, tell the physiatrist, tell everyone, where your client is, um, discharge recommendations, the whole thing. So they'll be looking for that as well. And the collaboration piece, I mean, that's what we're going to get to talk to a little bit in our last seminar with our PT faculty is just, how can we collaborate? And also some of the rules and regulations about team treating and stuff too. We can touch on that as well. Okay, and then some last areas, demonstrate skills. And so there's a whole section just on your therapeutic use of self. The prior section kind of touches on that, on how you're able to respond, right, to how your client's responding to the intervention. But then there is a whole section where they're going to be looking at your therapeutic use of self, both just in individual and group interactions. And then lastly, they're going to be looking at, were you able to identify occupational needs? Really staying grounded in what we are here to offer as OTs, right? Um, and being able to also communicate that to the team, to other professionals, at the site, etc. Sometimes you can be making recommendations. You can identify a real occupational need that another, type of professional could also be playing a pretty big part in. And so you can flag that for the team. So yeah, that is a good breakdown of kind of the full spectrum of what you're going to be working on through the course of your level 2. And so of course, when you first start in your first weeks, you're not expected to be hitting, all the targets and all those sections. But the idea is by the end, you are, at a entry level practitioner level across all of those sections. Let's see. Hold on, my chat. Okay. Sorry. Okay. And then lastly, they actually do want you to be, of course, showing that you're adhering to our code of ethics and standards of practice. But I know you all have been covering that in your didactics, so I know you're going to have a good grounding in that. But that's where I wasn't clearly articulating it before, but certainly even if you have conflicts that you're coming up against, even with how you feel your fieldwork educator is approaching certain things, if you feel like they're in conflict with any of these codes, certainly reach out to me and I can help you through that. We can figure out the best course of action. Okay. So we've said this a million times. You're going to finish at the level of practicing at entry-level therapist. Um, Also looking for just leadership skills, right? Ability to speak to kind of what the role of OT is. And then ideally, as you meet with your educator, they're looking that you're also showing some insight into your professional strengths and challenges, etc. Okay, so I believe you guys are familiar with this. So these are your dates. Um, like I said before, there's some flexibility with these dates. We can extend if needed. Some of you have already been notified that we've shifted dates a little bit just out of needs at the site, etc. So these are generally the dates that you all will be going out on field work, but there's some room for variation with that. Um, yes. And yeah, this is just a reiteration. I mean, we're kind of almost through the full matching process, but just kind of a reiteration that we try to match you to, your location, setting preference, all the things, but sometimes we have to prioritize one or the other. Okay, so the schedule. So we've talked about this a little bit already. So standards for attendance are quite strict. So this is a time in your life where you are asked to just really plan for this, that you're expected to really be there. So the written code, I need to have you guys have completed 12 weeks at least and at least 480 hours. If it's 432, that's something that we will have talked about because you have told me that it's looking like your educator works less than 40 hours a week, and we'll just know that. The risky thing, the 432 is really our low bar threshold though. So if you start missing time, we're going to have to for sure be adding on to your fieldwork experience. So we really don't want to be pushing too close to that 432. So flag that for me if you think that's going to be the case, and we just kind of need to have a good plan in place. Um, and so where some of this flexibility comes in is some major holidays might fall over the course of your field work. So that's where some folks end up, with like a little bit different total hours. And so if obviously if the site is closed, they're on holiday, you'll be on holiday as well. A good thing to note, there are some sites that might ask you to do homework, to go home and read up on a certain type of condition, or may ask you to refresh on an assessment, or they might actually want you to almost do kind of like an in-service on a topic of your choice. So this is all just site specific, and if they require that, then you are to complete that, but those hours that you work on these things don't count towards your like clinical hours. We need to have that minimum amount of actual clinical time practicing as a clinician. So those two things can't overlap. Okay, so we've talked about all this. One thing to note for sure, some of you may have um, worked with OAA already with either like flexible attendance, etc. If you have that, if you know that you're going to have like medical conflicts or anything that you have already flagged this with OAA, or you feel like you need to, now would be the time to do that and really articulate what that can and should look like when you're out on field work. And so we want to have that really well specified. I've been asking all of y'all advisors to touch base with you if they knew you guys were working with OA for your didactics. I think I'm going to speak to this again in a minute, but we really want to make sure that we're thinking ahead on this, on how that might translate to clinical practice. Okay, so then just reiterating, this is just a time in your life where you're just not going to be able to take personal time, vacations, etc. You're just going to have to be, present at fieldwork for the full time. Okay.
Katie, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So to get the at, at least the minimum 432 hours working 8 hours 8-hour days, that gives us 6 flex days of 8 hours, like kind of that we could basically miss. Two of those would be Memorial and 4th of July, which I think are the two holidays in the first. So that's 4 days that we could potentially like miss and still have enough hours. As far as like sick days, is there flexibility of like wedding, funeral, family emergency type thing?
There really isn't, unfortunately. It's just we just ask you guys to try to schedule or plan these things around it as much as possible. Obviously, some things can't be planned, and that's where, if you touch base with me, I mean, because really the minimum hours is 480. But then where, we have to change is if the site isn't offering you that in the 12 weeks, then we'll talk to the site, we'll have a plan in place. But that's really the default. If your fieldwork educator is sick one day, then, obviously you can't come in, and that's where, your hours will start to cut down from that 480, but that's where that threshold that we hold so don't think about it as time that you can take. It's really just not. Unfortunately, that's just wiggle room for us to make sure we have a standard for the absolute number of hours that we expect you to be clinically trained, if that makes sense. But really the standard is actually the 480. Yeah, I know but yeah, this is just the how we have to do it. Okay, so if you miss time, you want to shoot an email to me, shoot an email to your educator because we are going to be needing to make these, decisions about whether you've gotten enough clinical training time. Because another component to that is if fieldwork educators feel like by the time the 9-week check-in is a pretty critical time, honestly. And if we're feeling like you're not going to meet objectives, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to talk about, okay, maybe we need to extend your fieldwork because the absolute policy for Waycoat that I need to be able to say when you guys leave here is that you are getting the minimum, 111 on your final exam. And so if your educator is contacting me telling me they don't think you're going to be there at the 12 weeks, then we're going to need to have a conversation about how we can kind of like make progress, because I want you all to complete your field works, be graduating on time, all of the things. So that's where time extensions and things come into play. This just the best way to think about it, you guys, is we need to get you a certain amount of clinical training time so that you are like at a certain level and we can say as a program that we have you at that minimum level. And so it's sometimes working with the educator to be like, okay, what is it going to look like for this person to be entry level at this site and how can we get them there? So that's why I kind of want to be in touch with you, want to know how things are going so that I can be advocating and helping you all move along. So the goal is, I mean, we always have folks passing the exams, but sometimes it takes a little extra um, clinical time to get there. So yeah. Okay, so yeah, so for grading and feedback, so AOTA has a standardized evaluation that all OT students have to that are used for all OT students that go out in field work. You'll do a midterm, but that one, it doesn't really, it's not that it doesn't matter, but the one that really matters, the real kind of game changer deal breaker for us, not being able to, continue you on for towards graduation is the final. At the final, we need you at a minimum score of 111. So yeah, so the midterm works as kind of a good metric, but again, I have also had folks at that week 9 check-in where fieldwork educators have flagged for me some concerns, and we've put things in place to make sure that our student would be successful um, towards that minimum score on their final.
Oh, so this evaluation is not just like your fieldwork evaluating you. This is an actual like exam that you take. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, it's not an exam. It's
Oh,
yeah, it's your fieldwork educator evaluating you. Yeah, they'll give
okay.
you like a
Oh,
score.
and then there's the score. Okay, that's why I was just confused. I was like, there's an exam. Um,
No, sorry.
it's just
I
the
don't even
score.
know what I'm saying. You guys, my head
Okay,
hurts so bad. If
sorry.
it's not making sense, please, yeah, ask questions.
Okay, okay.
Yes, sorry. There's like an evaluation. And so all those objectives that we just went through, those are like the different sections basically that they're going to be scoring you on.
Kind
Um,
of a bit significantly different than the level one evaluation form.
I believe so. There, because that is one that I believe Pacific developed. There's no standardized level
No,
one.
it's a, well, or maybe I think they might use the level two for, it is an AOTA form, but
Yeah. Yeah. That's not, so anyways, it doesn't matter for you guys. Well, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm like being I can find out. What I can do is I could post for you. I don't even know. It's really hard. You have to get it out of FormStack. Um, I'm sorry. Okay. I can
it's
find out.
okay. I was just curious. It's not an exam, it's a form. Fine.
Yeah.
You can move on.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see they're really weird. It's hard to download the form. It like lives in this thing called FormStack. So it's not like an actual file that we're given, but I can see if I can find a way to like, um, yeah, I will get more information on that for you all.
Okay, thanks.
That would be helpful. Yeah.
I
Um,
also
yeah,
see
how it
there's
relates to one. So
a
go ahead.
comment from Cameron in the
Oh yeah, I was just about to jump in and interrupt. I was just trying to sort out the hours business in my head because I think I will be in a situation where occasionally there will be other professionals on the team who are supervising me. That's why I'm asking this. So I think maybe earlier in the presentation we saw that there's a minimum of 8 hours per week with your actual supervisor. I anticipate much more than that with mine, but occasionally there will be other OTs that work on the team with her that I will be with. And so I guess what I'm wondering is it seems like there's the potential for many of my hours to be with somebody else. And so let's say my supervisor is sick that day, do those hours not count? Like, would I not, because
No, 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 not at all. Yeah. Anytime that you are at your site working under supervision, those hours count for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
because it seems like there would be like quite a bit of potential flexibility that, not flexibility in that I wouldn't be there, but I just mean like that there would be hours coming, what from
Well,
not just the time that I'm with her.
absolutely. And that's a lot of the times how we fill in if there's a site where an educator doesn't have that, full time that we're looking for. Sometimes that's what we'll do is we'll link you up with some other folks for sure. But if you're at the site, that absolutely counts. The idea is it's your clinical hours that you're working clinically.
And does there need to be any protocol that where those other people that I am with are recorded or registered in some way for like I was with them for these hours?
Well, yeah, Cameron, and for anyone that is getting information that you feel like maybe I'm not fully aware of, just relay that to me. If there's another OT working with you, there is a couple forms that I want them to fill out, just so I know. It also allows us that flexibility if something happened to your fieldwork educator, they all of a sudden had to be out. If I knew that they met certain standards, this other, OT that was there, we can make an easy switch. So I like to have those forms, these ACOTE forms from any OT that you might be working with on a, somewhat regular basis. So yeah, that would be a good instance to let me know. But otherwise, if you're supervised by, a PT or a CODA, no, there's no form that I need. We just need to be sure that you have supervision at all times and have a good plan. Yeah, good question. So I hope that made sense. So as you all start talking to your fieldwork educators in these next weeks and start learning kind of what the layout's going to be, if it's sounding like something different from what you're expecting or what you're told, feel free to reach out to me. And the best thing is like in advance to have a plan in place, right? So everyone's on the same page. But then I thought you were going to ask also, there's the case sometimes where someone is with an OT almost half the time and another OT almost half the time. Who is going to be grading and giving feedback? We basically decide who's going to be your primary OT, and then those folks kind of speak to each other and relay any necessary information. And then we're going to use, as far as like your ACOTE passing, exam, your primary OT evaluation. Some OTs that have a pretty clean split like that, they like to offer the opportunity to give an evaluation as well. So you may get an evaluation from both those OTs, but when it like comes to technicalities, we're following the primary OT. But also there's never that big of a difference anyways. It's just a technicality. So I hope that made sense. You will always have one OT that's going to be evaluating you for your pass for the level 2. Yeah. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. So yes, so again, so the minimum score is 111. I know it doesn't mean a lot to you guys, but when we reach midterm, that's where you'll have a chance to kind of look at that and see where you are in perspective to where you need to be. And we'll have plenty of time to kind of put a plan in place. The regular feedback, again, that's where I'm kind of, you can almost like blame me in a way, because some fieldwork educators may be less inclined to have regular planned meetings. So that's where I'm kind of building this in for you guys. So on that week 3 and week 9, I'm requiring that you do that little form, just to make sure that you're having a chance to kind of check in on how you're doing with your educator, because it's important. We want to make sure you're on track. Okay. Okay, I spoke to this briefly, but so fieldwork projects, and we're at 4 o'clock. Shoot. Okay. Yeah, so just site dependent. I'm sorry, you guys. I feel like I have a splitting headache. I don't even know. I'm gonna take some of the content that I feel like is really important. We're gonna reiterate it in a much more clear and concise way the next time we meet next week. I should hopefully be better. I'm sorry. And then there's some activities that I wanted to do at the end here and some goal setting, but we'll just do that next week. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let me make sure questions in the chat. If our fieldwork educator is going to be out for a planned time off during our time there, do we need to notify you of that? Yeah, especially if it's going to start pushing, if it's going to start really cutting down your hours, we might want to talk about like if they're going to be out for a week, we really need to plan then probably for you to kind of push out to that next week, a whole nother week with them, right? So hopefully they would have told me that, but sometimes I'm telling you, it's just, you guys, I am like very much in a lot of contact, communication with these folks, but they just choose to share different things at different times. I don't even know. So the most that you can also communicate with me, it's a big help. So we can all like be on a team together. So certainly if you hear that your fieldwork educator is having like a big chunk of time where they're going to be out, definitely flag that for me. We need to talk to the site. We can either A, link you up with, a different OT, or B, we can look at a different timing because we do need to get those clinical hours. Okay. Thank you, Nora. The voucher form is linked at the end of the slides. I'm sorry. I am not thinking clearly right now. Because my brain was trying to think. Anyways, Davey had a lot of questions about how our evaluations with level 2 are different from his level 1, and I just know that. Anyways, they may be the same, but they're not required to be the same. It's just what I'm going to say. Okay. Okay. I hate that this was our first meeting together, you guys. I promise you I'm not usually this, but we did it. And I will see you next week. Yeah, and I'll be in touch. Just look out for emails. Yay. I'll let you guys go. Bye.